Ladies and gentlemen, hearty welcome to technical session on e-assessment. Today we have arranged a technical session, newly notified e-assessment scheme, practical aspects of e-assessment. To enlighten us, we have invited an eminent advocate, CA Narendra Jain is with us. May request our branch chairman to escort him on to dais and also welcome him with the floral bouquet. Thank you, Chairman. Before introducing the speaker, I have few announcements. We have arranged a session on robotic automation on 22nd October. Again, next Tuesday, 22nd October, 2-hour session evening, 6 to 8 p.m. a session on robotic automation. How RPA will be a game changer in the world of finance. CA Janardhan Hebbar is going to talk on that. Please make use of that session. And again on 25th October, a full day seminar on information technology. CA leading the digital transformation, a full day seminar in the same premises on 25th October, Friday. Please register for that also. And it is my pleasure to introduce CA Narendra Jain to this August gathering. A brilliant chartered accountant, a renowned advocate Narendra Jain. He practiced as chartered accountant from 2007 to 2017. Currently he is practicing as an advocate in the name of NNMS Legal Chambers, Bangalore. He has experience in advising clients and handling taxation litigation in transfer pricing, corporate tax and international taxation. His other activities includes he authored a book, Analysis of Transfer Pricing Judgments, published by CCH. He co-authored a book on digital commerce, an analysis of taxation aspects and emerging issues, published by IFA Bangalore subchapter. He is a regular speaker across India in various forums. With this brief intro, I present CA Narendra Jain before you. Please join me to welcome him once again.
Respected seniors in profession and dear friends, I would like to start with thanking Bangalore branch for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this new notified scheme, which the government is saying that it's going to be a game changer in terms of assessments that for the income tax assessments. The digital revolution, which is happening in last couple of decades, we see that impact of that on the income tax area also. 2006 onwards, e-filing came in. CPC has picked up pace subsequently. In 2015, pilot project of e-assessment started, and now the government proposes to do a faceless assessment where we would be interacting with the technology or the computer resource rather than an individual assessing officer. What is the objective for this? What is the legal framework of this? How they have envisaged this scheme? What are the challenges that we would face in terms of legal aspects and practical aspects? And what are the rights of taxpayers that would get impacted? Today I have certain rights while I am appearing before the tax authorities, how that would get impacted. So we'll try and understand this in next 2 hours. I will try to put my analysis. This is a new topic, so we could have an exchange of views and difference of opinion on many of the issues. It would be good if it is an interactive session and we have exchange of views on this emerging topic. the existing assessment framework, section 116 defines income tax authorities. Then the board has powers under 119, 120. Section 120 gives the power to the board to assign jurisdiction to the assessing officer. Currently, the assessing officer gets his power or gets his functions, powers as well as functions, by virtue of a notification which gets issued under section 120 subsection 1. Now that is an important aspect of current assessment procedure, where each assessee is assigned to a particular assessing officer. So entire country is divided into different zones, different assessees are allocated or assigned to different assessing officers, basically based on 4 parameters which are dealt in section 120 subsection 3, which is area, territorial area, class of persons, class of income and class of cases. So these are 4 parameters which we have known right from 1961, and based on these 4 parameters the assessment is assigned or jurisdiction is assigned to the assessing officer. We see a great change in terms of how the assessment or the jurisdiction gets assigned in the new scheme. Then you have concept of concurrent jurisdiction under 120 subsection 5, where 2 or more assessing officers can concurrently have jurisdiction over an assessee. You have section 124, which defines how the territorial, in case of territorial area, how the jurisdiction will be determined, because if you are doing a business or profession, then the principal place of business is relevant. If you are not doing business or profession, then the place of residence is relevant for determining what is your territorial area. We have provisions of 127 for transfer of case between one AO to another AO. We have provision of 129 when there is a change of incumbent, that opportunity should be given to the assessee. We have 139 which doesn't change with the new scheme, but again the change will come in 142, 143. Substantial impact will have in those sections. There are provisions, existing provisions of 144 capital A, 144C. So we need to see how these schemes works with those provisions. We have provisions of 147, 148. Those are left untouched by the scheme. Similarly, search proceedings 132, 153A, B, C, D. Those are also kept out of the scheme. But surely there will be some interaction or some impact on these provisions, especially 263, 264 revision. So this entire concept of the existing assessment is going to get replaced with this concept of e-assessment. Why did government think so? Couple of things. They thought that what would be relevant, if you see the insertion of 143.3a, they said that we want to bring greater transparency. We want to bring greater efficiency and proper allocation of resources. Because there is a feeling that few officers may be overburdened with the work, and somewhere in muffassil areas the officers may not have that many of cases. Then there is the issue of transparency. There is a feeling that there is a revenue leakage due to corruption at certain cases. We have seen action being taken on IRS officers in last few years, and they have been permanently retired on the basis that there could be some corruption allegation or charges against those officers. There is an issue of harassment to the assessee by high-pitched assessment, right? Because today the assessment is driven by targets which are allocated to each zone, further divided at each range and at each assessing officer level. So there is a question of high-pitched assessment that might happen in certain cases where the officer knows that it is not a good case to make an addition or a disallowance, but he still goes ahead and makes an assessment or addition because he has to meet his collection targets. Then post-assessment there is a collection mechanism which triggers here. Now they want to change all this. This is the objective of that we try to bring in transparency and efficiency in the administration and do this. How successful this would be, that is in the womb of future, we cannot comment today. But what we can try and understand is how this scheme will work and how this scheme will interact with the existing provision. This scheme is not a separate code by itself. It just comes and sits into the existing statute. Therefore, it has to gel well with the existing provision. Any conflict with the existing provision would create a friction or create a legal issues in terms of whether the assessment is valid or invalid. So, therefore, we need to understand that how it would gel well with the other provision. What would be the interpretation that would arise because of this? There is a possibility that because of this scheme, certain sections become odious. For example, the way we look at it, there is no mechanism currently 144 capital A, you can make an application to JC to give a direction to the assessing officer. The scheme does not visualize such a situation. So now how do you interpret those provisions? How do you interpret 263, 264? If I have to make suppose I make a 264 application today, I need to go to the CIT to say that I am making a 264 application and kindly give me relief. Now that application can be made to a CIT, to the assessing officer, and who is the senior of that assessing officer. That means the CIT has jurisdiction only on his subordinates. Now who will be that CIT? Because National E-Assessment Center is sitting somewhere in Delhi. So the CIT of National E-Assessment Center is relevant, or my own jurisdictional assessing officer is relevant. So a lot of these questions do arise because of this scheme. Possibly some may get clarified as we go forward and the government brings in the clarifications on those aspects. But some if the issues remain open, they would be open to challenge. The scheme would remain open to challenge. If you see the timeline and certain important notifications which have come in last 1 month, how this scheme has been framed. So first 2015 they started a pilot, they extended it in May 2016 to more jurisdictions. In 2016 Finance Act, they changed the definition, they inserted the definition of hearing, 223C. Hearing includes communication of data and documents through electronic mode. So even a hearing through an electronic mode, they inserted to provide that it is treated as hearing. So it is not necessary that there should be personal hearing. So that is what the intention was there of this. 2017 the task force was set up to come up with the plan for the e-assessment. Now the major or the important amendment came in 2018, where 3 sections 143.3a, 143.3b and 143.3c were inserted. These are very critical sections because the power to notify this scheme is coming from these sections. And what these sections deal with, we will, as we proceed further, we will see. Now 3a, the scheme is issued under section 143.3a. Now interestingly, 143.3b gives power to the board to amend these sections so that the scheme is workable. We will see as we go further. September 2019, they notified the e-assessment scheme by notification 61 and 62, and 61 was issued under 143.3a, 62 was issued under 143.3b. Now what is the relevance of this? As we go further we will see. 61 also set up the National E-Assessment Center on 12th September 2019. So we would see that most of the notices have come post this, and the notification 65 is the notification 65 and 71 and 72 are 77 are certain important notifications which are making this scheme workable, and this is where really the crux of the matter lies. So 61, 62, 65, 72 and 77. These 5 notifications make the scheme workable. Section 6, the notification 65 did an interesting thing. Now ideally I should get a notice under 143.2 from my jurisdictional assessing officer. If any of you have seen those notices which have come in last month, you would have seen that either it is stated as Assistant Commissioner of Income Tax E-Verification, or it is stated as National E-Assessment Center, Ministry of Finance, Delhi. So there are some variations in some of the notices what I have seen at this, but these are the notices which have come. Now question is whether person sitting in National E-Assessment Center could have issued a 143.2 to the assessing. Is he the assessing officer to issue a notice? If a notice is issued by a wrong assessing officer, it is open to challenge under 124 subsection 3, saying that he is not my jurisdictional assessing officer, this notice is invalid. Now, can we say that these notices which are issued by National E-Assessment Center are valid? So what they did is, by virtue of notification 65 of 2019, they said that ACIT E-Verification Delhi, who is having the headquarters in Delhi, is notified as to act as a prescribed authority for the purpose of section 143.2 of the Act in respect of returns furnished under section 139 or returns furnished under 142.1 during the financial year commencing on 1st April 2018. Please note that here it is only used the words commencing on 1st April 2018 for the purpose of issuance of notice under 143.2. So by virtue of this notification, they prescribed National E-Assessment Center, the person in the National E-Assessment Center, ACIT e-verification. That person became the prescribed authority to issue notices across India for under 143.2 for all returns filed under 139 or 142.1 during the financial year 18-19. So any return filed during the financial year 18-19, the power to issue 143.2 came with the National E-Assessment Center ACIT e-verification. So, and if you see the next notification, not 71, 72, I'll come to that. What 71 did was, because the cadre had to move from their existing jurisdiction to the e-assessment center, they deleted certain posts in the existing cadre. Like for example, if you see Karnataka, the jurisdiction of Davangere was with CIT Davangere, and that no more exists. They made an amendment to the notification 50 of 2014, and that cadre, the Davangere post, which became vacant because of cancellation of jurisdiction there, was moved to the National E-Assessment Center. So that power, that transition happened through the notification 71 and 73. Now what did 72 and 77 do? Again, this is very interesting. 72 dated 23rd September 2019 provided that by virtue of powers under 120 section 125, CBDT hereby directs that income tax authorities specified in this notification shall exercise and perform concurrently the powers and functions of the assessing officer, to facilitate e-assessment proceedings in the centralized manner in respect of returns furnished under 139 or 142 during the financial year commencing on or after 1st April 2018. These authorities are, there are around 7 authorities: PCIT, CIT, additional CIT, DCIT, ACIT, ITO. So these certain officers were moved from their existing cadre to National E-Assessment Center, and those officers were, by virtue of notification 72, were given the power that they are prescribed income tax authority. For which reason? Not just for Delhi, but for entire country. And they become assessing officer. They got power. 120 subsection 5 says the board has power to give concurrently. We can prescribe one or more income tax authorities, assessing officers. So by virtue of that 120 subsection 5, they said every officer sitting in National E-Assessment Center becomes the assessing officer for all the assessors in India. For all the persons who have filed return under 139 or 142.1 everywhere in India, they become the assessing officer. Same thing was done by the notification 77. Now what notification 77 did was, they said that every income tax authority of regional e-assessment center. What is National E-Assessment Center? What is regional e-assessment center? I will come back to that. But just to give, so that when we are going to the legislative changes, then we will reconnect it to the other changes what they have done. So by virtue of 77, in notification 72, they gave the power of assessing officer to persons sitting in National E-Assessment Center. Same thing they did by virtue of notification 77, and they gave the power of assessing officer to around 600 odd officers sitting in regional e-assessment center. They set up regional e-assessment centers at around 8 locations. Bangalore is one. So every officer sitting in this regional e-assessment center becomes the assessing officer for entire India. So that is the first problem that arises, that whether a concurrent jurisdiction can be given to some 600 odd officers for every assessee and everywhere in India. 120 subsection 5 says if there is a necessity, 2 or more assessing officers can be given the concurrent power over the assessee. Now here, without there being any necessity, roughly 600 odd officers have been given concurrent power of the assessing officer for all the assessees across India. So that would be one legal issue that would arise, whether the jurisdiction given under the concurrent jurisdiction given to all officers sitting in National E-Assessment Center and Regional E-Assessment Center, whether that is valid, whether that is sufficient jurisdiction, or whether that would be open to challenge. Now just look at 143 3A, 3B and 3C. Then we go to the scheme. What 3A did? 3A said that the central government may make a scheme by notification in official gazette for the purpose of making an assessment of total income or loss of an assessee under subsection 3 so as to impart greater efficiency. Now this is the objective of the scheme: transparency and accountability. So for the purpose of making an assessment under 143.3, ideally they should have, here in the main limb of 3A, they should have used both the words, both the subsections 143.2 and 143.3, because they are issuing notice also by virtue of this scheme. But anyways, but they have said that 143.3 will be covered, eliminating interface between the assessing officer and the assessing in the course of proceedings to the extent technologically feasible, optimizing utilization of resource through economies of scale and functional specification, introducing a team-based assessment with dynamic jurisdiction. So the board under 143.3A got power to notify a scheme which has these objectives: eliminating interface, optimizing utilization of resources, and bringing in team-based assessment. Look at 143.3B, then this is an important section. The central government may, for the purpose of giving effect to the scheme made under subsection 3A, by notification in official gazette, direct that any of the provisions of this act relating to assessment of total income or loss shall not apply, or shall apply with such exception, modification, adaptation as may be specified in the notification. So under 143.3B, the board got power to change a provision related to assessment. So to give effect to the intention of 3A, that is an e-assessment scheme, if the government wants to change any provision, if they want to say that a provision is not applicable or shall apply with exception, modification, adaptation, then they can specify in the scheme. For example, if there is a current procedure of issuing 143.2 notice, or there is a current procedure of asking information under 142.1, the board now under 3B has a power to change that provision and say this is how it will function. Similarly, if there is a provision of levying a penalty, then the board has power now to change the procedure for levying a penalty. Now this power has been given to the board. Now under 3B, notification 62 has been issued, which goes and amends various sections in the act with certain changes here and there. So they say that the 3B, the notification 62 issued under 3B provides that following sections will be changed as per the follows. It will be changed according to this. Now this is again something which will be open to challenge, because is this an excessive delegation? Can a notification of the board go and amend the act in such a way that it is divorced or against the purpose of that original section? So when a provision or when a power is delegated, it has to satisfy certain tests. The legislature has to have control over that delegation. Legislature should know what has been getting changed, and the change should not impact the legislative powers of parliament in terms of what power they have to make the assessment. Those powers should not get impacted. Now here if you see, 3B goes and changes the sections, and they say that the sections will have to be modified or adapted in the following manner. To that extent, whether a notification goes and changes the sections and what is the impact of that, that would again be open to challenge, and whether the constitutional validity of the notification 62 of 2019 something will have to be tested. What they have done is, in 3B is, every notification issued shall be laid before each house of parliament. Every notification issued shall be laid before each house of parliament. Now look at this. Ideally, if a section has to be amended, a bill has to be produced. Ideally, it has to be debated in the parliament, though debate may really not happen, and then it has to be passed in both the houses. Now, if a notification is making a change to a section, it is just being laid and it is not being discussed. So this is where the problem is. Ideally, it should have been laid and discussed, and if any member of parliament or the house wants that the particular provision is changed, that change should have been incorporated in notification. That window should have been given in 3C, which has not been given. So that there would be some problem because of this, saying that this delegation of power, whether it is proper or not, whether it is proper or not. So these are some things which primarily I wanted to bring to your notice before we really go into the scheme. Now what have they done? They have said that we set up a national e-assessment center. Now this is headquartered at Delhi. All interaction with the assessee and the assessing officer or the other units in the assessment will be through National E-Assessment Center. So National E-Assessment Center is an interface, and one side is the assessee, other side are the assessment units. So the National E-Assessment Center will conduct e-assessment proceedings in a centralized manner, which shall be vested with the jurisdiction to make assessment in accordance with the provision of this scheme. As I said, roughly 9 officers have been transferred to National E-Assessment Center. Those officers will exercise jurisdiction concurrently across all assessors in India by virtue of notification 65 and by virtue of notification 72. So those officers will have power to issue 143(2), and the same officers will have power to make assessment for all assessors in India. Right? So that is the first thing. So there is a National E-Assessment Center. Then there is a Regional E-Assessment Center. This is currently prescribed at 8 locations at different places in India like Delhi, Ahmedabad, Mumbai, Pune, Chennai, Bangalore, Kolkata, Hyderabad. Now here this Regional E-Assessment Center will conduct e-assessment proceedings in the cadre controlling region of Principal Chief Commissioner. So this will be headed by a Principal Chief Commissioner, which shall be vested with the jurisdiction to make assessment as per the said scheme. Each Regional E-Assessment Center will have 4 units. Each Regional E-Assessment Center will have 4 units. Verification unit, assessment unit, technical unit and review unit. We'll just see the first is the assessment unit. To facilitate the conduct of e-assessment, to perform functions of making assessment, which includes identification of points and issues, material for the determination of any liability including refund, seeking information or clarification on points, issues so identified, analysis of material furnished by the assessee, etc. for the purpose of making assessment. So the role of assessment unit is to make assessment. The role of assessment unit is to make assessment. It will analyze the information given by the assessee. It will analyze, ask further information if it wants, and it will make the assessment. Now it will not directly interact with the assessee. If assessment unit wants something, it will send a message to National E-Assessment Center, and National E-Assessment Center will send it to the assessee. So what they are talking of faceless assessment, you really don't know who is the person in which assessment unit is doing the assessment, and in that assessment unit which officer is doing the assessment, because you always get a notice only from the National E-Assessment Center. Now further, there is a verification unit. Now there is a requirement that the assessment unit has certain information, some clarifications may be required, some site visit may be required, some inquiry is required to be done. That will not be done by the assessment unit, that will be done by the verification unit. Now what is verification unit? To facilitate conduct of e-assessment, perform functions of verification, which includes inquiry, cross-verification, examination of books of accounts, examination of witness, recording of statement for the purpose of verification. Even if assessee wants a personal hearing, which they have said that you can do it through video conferencing, even that hearing will be done by verification unit, not by the assessment unit. So they are breaking the entire assessment into different units, because they said team-based assessment, faceless assessment. So you really don't know which officer is doing one. Second, it is a team. So from the government's point of view, it is not easy to give bribe, or the corruption may come down, because you have to satisfy one person is easy. When you have to satisfy a team, naturally the cost is much higher. So there is a verification unit, which is there is a verification. Next there is a technical unit. Now what does this technical unit does? Technical unit is a sort of specialization, which is as the name suggests, some knowledge based one. It is not directly interacting with the assessee, but it will do some amount of research, advisory function to the assessment unit. To facilitate the conduct of e-assessment, to perform the functions of providing technical assistance, which includes any assistance or advice on legal, accounting, forensic, information technology, valuation, transfer pricing, data analytics, management, or any other technical matter which may be required in a particular case or class of cases. So there is a technical unit which will be supposed to have certain experts who will have an in-depth knowledge of the subject, and they will give advice on various matters to the assessment unit. Then there is a fourth unit, review unit. Now assessing officer, rather the assessment unit has gone through the assessment, has prepared a draft order, and that draft order is sent to the National E-Assessment Center. There are certain checks and balances placed post that. One of the check and balances is review unit. So every order where the National E-Assessment Center feels that it requires a review will be given to the review unit. So the review unit will, what it will do? It will conduct an e-assessment to perform the functions of review of draft assessment order, which includes checking whether the relevant material evidences are brought in record, checking the quality of orders. Many of us will see cryptic orders which are of not good quality, copy paste errors, some other assess's name appearing, some other PANs appearing, arithmetical errors, relevant judicial decisions not cited. So the review unit's work is to strengthen the draft order of the assessment unit. So this way there are 4 different units. These 4 units will work under the regional e-assessment center. They will work under the principal commissioner in the regional e-assessment center, and they will be reporting to them. And above that there is a national e-assessment center. The review unit will not talk to the assessment unit. If it has to talk, it has to tell the national e-assessment center. National e-assessment center will tell to the assessment unit. When I saw this, I remembered a game which I played with my daughter, Chinese Whisper. You tell in ear, she tells the next person, she tells the next person. Ultimately when it comes back, the meaning of that word is lost. Something else comes up. So I hope it doesn't happen that way. And what is conveyed at different places remain in this, or at least there is a record of each of this. As we go further, we will see where these challenges arise. And in terms of assessing and protecting the taxpayer's right, how we should be cautious. Because the entire scheme does not even talk of how the file notings will be done. If I have said something, how the file notings will be done. There is no scheme, does not even visualize that kind of a situation. They are presuming everything will be online. Right? So these kind of issues will crop up, will arise as we go further. But these are 4 units. Yeah.
Just have a question here. As you said, in the regional assessment center, 4 units will be there for assessing, reviewing, and technical support all of this.
Yeah.
In regional assessment centers, we'll be having assessing unit, review unit, everything, right? So, for example, an assessee is having the jurisdiction in Karnataka. So, Bangalore, will that be allotted to Bangalore only?
No, I will come to that. The allocation will be through randomized automated tool.
Okay.
So, the assessment of Infosys may be done by some person sitting somewhere else. So it is not that the Bangalore assessors will be allocated to Bangalore Regional E-Assessment Center. If that is the case, the purpose would anyway be lost.
And how about this assessment will be done in Bangalore unit and review can be done in any other regional unit?
Yes.
But that is also possible.
Yes. So that is the reason, as I said, the notification 72 and 77 said all the officers in regional e-assessment centers are your assessing officers. Otherwise, there would have been problem in terms of whether verification unit person is my assessing officer. If he is not my assessing officer, why is he asking me questions? Or why is he doing an inquiry? That would have been a difficulty. It's a different issue that can you make 600 odd officers as assessing officer for every assessee in India? That's a different issue. But the way they have visualized it, every person sitting in National E-Assessment Center and Regional E-Assessment Center is assessing officer by virtue of notification 65, 72 and 77.
Speaker, sir, the ultimate order that the assessee receives
Will be from National E-Assessment Center.
will not have any designation, will not have any
It will have designation of ACIT e-verification.
That's all.
ACIT e-verification.
No name, no specific designation.
No. There is a name, if you drill down, there is a digital signature where you can make out that there is some person called, I don't remember the name, he is the person who has issued all 58,000 notices in India. As of now.
Sir, one more thing. Similarly, the linkage between the pan and the circle, those things will go. Right?
Okay, now, this is a very important part. What happens to my existing jurisdictional assessing officer? He still remains my jurisdictional assessing officer? Or, now the assessee has 3 different assessing officers. One is your jurisdictional assessing officer, one assessing officer sitting in National E-Assessment Center, and another assessing officer sitting in Regional E-Assessment Center. They have given concurrent jurisdiction to, by virtue of notification 72 and 77, they have given concurrent jurisdiction to the assessing officer sitting in National E-Assessment Center and Regional E-Assessment Center. So your existing assessing officer still remains your assessing officer. Now how this will play out as we go further into the scheme, these questions I will try to answer, that how this will, what is the function of your existing jurisdictional assessing officer and what is the function of the assessing officer sitting in National E-Assessment Center and Regional E-Assessment Center. But your existing assessing officer is still your assessing officer, though he may really not have any work related to you. Okay. So this visualizes concurrent jurisdiction. This is visualizing a concurrent jurisdiction at existing jurisdictional assessing officer the assessing officer sitting in National E-Assessment Center and assessing officer sitting in regional E-Assessment centers. The assessment units, all of the assessment units, verification unit, assessment unit, technical unit, review unit, will have 3 cadre of assessing officers: additional commissioners, joint commissioners, ACDC, ITO, and other ministerial staff, which will be inspectors and others. They have already moved roughly 609 officers to the regional E-Assessment Center by virtue of a transfer orders. They have already been moved to the regional E-Assessment Center. So that is why they issued another notification 71, where they gave additional charge. For example, because Davangere post was going out and moving to the regional E-Assessment Center, Bangalore CIT got the additional charge of Davangere. Like this, those administrative changes they have, we are really not worried about that. One more important thing that would pan out or arise because of this is how the targets work. We all know that there are targets at the assessing officer level. Now, whether when you are doing this tax collection, we all know that despite they using good amount of tactics in last Feb and March, which are close to extortion, there is still shortfall of 65,000 crores in tax collection. Now, will the assessing officer have target or National E-Assessment Center have target? This is an internal issue. We really don't know how it would work. But now, can the jurisdictional assessing officer, if he has target, how will he collect it? Because assessment is done by National E-Assessment Center. How will he meet this target? And if there are no targets, whether the fiscal math of government could go haywire. This is something which I think government would have thought through, and the targets, it appears, may be retained at the regional or the jurisdictional assessing officer level. The reason for that, why I think so is again my presumption is that the scheme visualizes that after the assessment order has been passed, the file will be moved to your jurisdictional assessing officer. So the collection part will still be done by the jurisdictional assessing officer. So that possibly the targets will still be set at the jurisdictional assessing officer, but for the jurisdictional assessing officer this could be challenging, because if he has been given a target of 1000 crores, he really doesn't know how much assessment and demand will be created by the National E-Assessment Center, and how will he collect 1000 crores. So these are some issues which would arise at the administrative level. We really need not worry about that, but this would be something which could work out favorably, because there are no targets at the regional jurisdictional assessing officer level, because then they would really not trouble us as it happens in every Feb and March, or it could be other way around also. Now, how does the scheme work? Again, another important point before we proceed further is the notification 62 made certain changes, and now when we are reading certain sections, we need to read this notification along with it. As I said, 143(3)(b) gave power to the board to issue a notification and say what modifications they want to make in the section. So for example, it says the provisions of section 27A, which is the assessing officer, 92CA, reference to TPO, 120, 124, 127, 129, 131, 133, 132 has not been modified because that relates to the search. 133 capital A, 133C, 134, 142, 142 capital A. These sections, when we are reading these sections, they have said shall apply to the assessment made in accordance with said scheme subject to following exceptions, modification, adaptations. That means these sections, when we are applying to e-assessment, will have to be read with the modifications, exceptions and adaptations provided in this scheme. For example, penalty provision. Now, if during the course of assessment, if I don't file a document, then the AO has a power to levy 10,000 rupees of penalty because I have not furnished the information that he has asked under 142. Now, currently the jurisdictional assessing officer would have levied that penalty. Now, this scheme says that chapter 21 will change, and now the penalty will be levied by National E-Assessment Center, and they have prescribed a provision for levying the penalty under the scheme under notification 61. So these sections which are modified by 62, to the extent when we are doing e-assessment, notification 61 and 62 will go and sit over the existing sections, and those modification, exception, adaptation which are provided in notification 61, 62 will have to be read into those respective sections. As I said in the beginning, whether they are constitutionally valid or not, that is something which we will keep aside. But it is something whenever we are reading these sections, and it is in relation to e-assessment, these notifications will be read, have to be read along with those sections to the extent there are changes suggested by this notification. Now let's come to the scheme. The scheme, first thing it provides is that National E-Assessment Center shall serve a notice on the assessee under section 143(2) specifying the issue for selection of his case for assessment. So this is the first modification, because existing 143(2) doesn't say what reasons had to be given or not. That all came to the board in instructions saying that whether it is limited scrutiny, full scrutiny, you will specify in the notice. Right? Now, all notices, as I said, if it is an e-assessment, will be issued by National E-Assessment Center. As I said in the beginning, notification 65 gives power to ACIT e-verification. He becomes the assessing officer for issuing notification in all cases. Now, this notice, please note here that it will specify the issue for selection of case for assessment. So, every notice issued has reasons. There could be 1 reason, 2 reasons, 4 reasons, or 6 reasons. But it has to have a reason. So every assessment which is being done by National E-Assessment Center will be limited scrutiny, a sort of that way. In some cases the number of issues may be more, but the power of doing assessment will have to be restricted to those limited 6 issues or 4 issues or 2 issues only. Under E-Assessment scheme there is no concept of full assessment, because the notice has to clearly say what is the issue for which the assessment has been picked. So this will have ramifications when we look at 263 and other provisions, but the notices have been there, and the notices which I have seen very clearly say this is the issue A, B, C, these are the issues, or 5 issues or 10 issues, but that the issues are very clearly stated in this. Right?
But these issues are very broad in nature.
It are very broad in nature. Some are very specific, some are very broad. Some are very specific, some are very broad. So again, these are
virtually, these may be full scrutiny.
in cases where the issues are broad, like one notice I have seen, import export of goods,
Business expenses.
business expenses. So those could be cases where the scope has got expanded. Yes. So those possibly we'll have to say that when you are saying you will specify the issue, means it should be specific. The word specify itself means specific. And if you give a broad issue, to that extent notice under 143(2) is invalid. So you will have to specify this thing. The notice will be issued. The scheme does not again visualize that a limited scrutiny under the scheme will be converted to complete scrutiny, like it did in the old circulars of the earlier assessment year. So there is no concept of converting a limited scrutiny under e-assessment to the complete scrutiny. Only power which the scheme has is if the assessment unit feels at any point of time, they can transfer the case from the e-assessment center to the jurisdictional assessing officer. That power has been given. But apart from that, it does not provide that National E-Assessment Center itself can convert a limited scrutiny into complete scrutiny. So they had to restrict them to the specific issues only. Now when they transfer these cases, another interesting issue will arise by virtue of 127. Every case which is transferred from one jurisdiction, one unit to another unit, they will have to be accompanied by a transfer order under 127. If there is no transfer order, the new assessing officer will not get the jurisdiction. For example, in the earlier regime, if there was an additional commissioner and the ACIT, both had concurrent jurisdiction by virtue of 120 subsection 5. Both had the power of a concurrent jurisdiction. But can the additional commissioner, without a transfer order, take a case of assessing officer and he himself do an assessment? He no doubt had a supervisory power under 144 capital A to do a supervision of the assessment, but he could not have taken the case and did the assessment himself unless there is a transfer order. For example, you can refer the decision of Tata Sons in Mumbai Tribunal, where they say, though there is a concurrent power, but even in cases of concurrent power, there should be a transfer order from one assessing officer to another assessing officer. We can possibly use this in e-assessment center. For example, where the assessment unit is asking certain information and verification is done by the verification officer. Are they two different assessing officers? No doubt both of them have concurrent jurisdiction. But if they are two different assessing officers, naturally there will have to be a transfer order from one assessment unit to another verification unit or review unit. This is something which will have to be tested again, but will be open to challenge that whether every transfer from one unit to another unit should be accompanied by a transfer order under 127. Now, the scheme visualizes that the assessee shall file response in 15 days from the date of receipt of notice to the National E-Assessment Center. The notice has been issued, the assessee has to file the response. Now all of this has to happen electronically. There is another important aspect that has to be noted here is the way they have modified their definition of email address and other things, computer resource and email address. Now the notice can be served at various places. It can be served at the return email ID given in the return, email ID given in your e-filing account, email ID or any other email ID specified by the assessee. If you are having an Aadhaar and Aadhaar is linked to the PAN, then the notice can be also issued to the email ID given in Aadhaar. If it is a company, the notice can be issued to the email ID or given in MCA. So those modifications also have been made in the scheme to provide and extend the scope of which it has been done. Further, they say they will come up with a mobile app, and the notification can be given on a mobile app and with an SMS alert also. So the scope of serving the notice has expanded. Given that the notice is given through digital means, the question is when is it served on the assessee? Because it has to be served within 6 months from the end of the financial year in which return has been filed. So all the notices for the returns filed in 18-19 financial year should have been served by 30th September. So for this they have gone back to the Section 13 of Information Technology Act, wherein the section provides that in case if it is a computer resource of the person, then when it enters the computer resource, it is good as served. If it is not a computer resource of the person, when he retrieves that notice, it will be deemed to be received by the recipient. So that definition of service of documents, electronic records in Section 13 of Information Technology Act has been brought into the Income Tax Act for the purpose of serving of notice. So they will send the notice electronically to assessee e-filing account or assessee's registered email. The assessee has to respond in 15 days. So assessee uploads the information, and the scheme provides that when he uploads the information, the National E-Assessment Center will generate an acknowledgement. And once that acknowledgement is generated, it is deemed that assessee has filed the relevant documents with the National E-Assessment Center. So this is the procedure. One important issue that arises here is, now they are giving us 15 days time limit. What if I want extra time limit? Whom should I go and ask the adjournment? Should I upload an adjournment letter on the portal and that is good enough? Or they come up with a different mechanism for the assessee to ask the information. This is not just for the initial notice, but all subsequent notice also the assessee may require time to collect information. The scheme again does not specifically provide that how the adjournments will be given or what would be the procedures for that, but taxpayer has a right to seek additional time, and that right should be protected. If you go by the judicial precedents which we have under the old law, if assessee has filed an adjournment letter into the TAPAL and AO has not responded, it is deemed that the assessee has got the adjournment. And then you cannot pass an assessment before that time limit what the assessee has asked has lapsed. We have good amount of judicial precedent in the context of 1399, in the context of the assessment also. So if I now upload an adjournment letter on the portal, that how they will view that is something which is not clear. But the assessee should be given an opportunity and additional time as and when he requires to file the additional information. Possibly the board should think through and make a provision of this sort that you can seek an adjournment on the online portal itself, and they give you additional time of 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, whatever is required, and make a mechanism for that. In absence of that mechanism, there are bound to be some difficulties as we practically go and implement this.
Notice will be sent to the SSA's mobile. What is that?
The mobile you would have given the number in your income tax return as well as your income tax login, right? So those there is a provision which the scheme visualizes that they will come up with a mobile app which will be linked and tied to that particular number which you have given in that thing. So the notification alert on that mobile app and SMS alert on that mobile will be given. They have to lay down the procedure for that. They have to come up with a mobile app, but as and when they come up, there will be more clarity on this. Now, next thing it comes is that the National E-Assessment Center shall assign the case to a specific assessment unit in any one regional e-assessment center through an automated allocation system. So here is where the role of assessment unit will start. So I have filed an information to the National E-Assessment Center. National E-Assessment Center will transfer or assign this case to a assessment unit in the regional e-assessment center. Here again the case is transferred to the assessment unit and not to an individual officer in the assessment unit. Currently, if you see in every assessment unit there are multiple assessing officers, like we have ACAT 1, 2, 3. So similar kind of assessing officers are there in the regional e-assessment center assessment unit. Their designation itself is regional e-assessment center assessment unit 1, 2, 3 like this. So the case will be assigned to a assessment unit. It will go to that assessment unit. That assignment will happen through an automated allocation system. Automated allocation system, which is defined that it will be an algorithm-based system, which will on a random basis allocate the case, having regard to the workload, efficiency, and other aspects. It will allocate the cases to the assessment unit. Now that assessment unit could be at one place, it could be at different place. So if assessment is in Bangalore, it could be at other place also. So if Infosys is in Bangalore, the assessing officer or assessment unit could be in Delhi also. This itself will throw certain challenges, because now the assessment unit is situated somewhere else, the national e-assessment unit is situated somewhere else. So national e-assessment centers ultimately will pass the order. Now when I file appeals, where should I file the appeals? Should I file the appeals to the existing CIT appeals? Should I file appeals to the same tribunal? And which high court will be applicable? CIT appeals, they have made clear provision that the appeals will be filed to your existing jurisdictional CIT appeals. So that the scheme has provided. ITIT also there won't be much of the problem, because ITIT very specifically says that based on the territorial area, the allocation of benches has been made. For example, Bangalore goes to Bangalore bench, the neighboring places go to Bangalore bench, Belgaum goes to Panji. So that way the allocation has been done. The challenge arises in the High Court, because there are various cases where the High Court has taken differing view that whether the jurisdiction of High Court will be based on the seat of the assessing officer, which in our cases will be Delhi, or whether it will be based on the seat of the assessee, which may be Bangalore. So should I file an appeal arising out of Bangalore ITIT decision to the Karnataka High Court or to the Delhi High Court? There are conflicting decisions between Punjab and Haryana High Court, Delhi High Court and Madras High Court, that what would be the jurisdictional High Court where you will file this appeal. That issue arises in the old cases also, where there is a transfer of registered office, and what would be the new High Court, jurisdictional High Court. But anyway, this would be more prominent in e-assessment, because in all cases the assessing officer is going to be the assessing officer sitting in Delhi.
For assessment is 1890, the allocation is not happened.
No, the scheme is not applicable for assessment year, it is applicable for assessment year 1890.
1890. You know, this allocation is not happened, but notices have been served under 143(2) without allocation.
No, as I said in the beginning, sir, the section 6, notification 65 of 2019 visualizes that all 143(2), entire 58,000 odd notice 143(2) which has been issued, will be issued by ACIT E-Verification, National E-Assessment Center, Delhi. So for issuing 143(2), the jurisdiction has been given to the National E-Assessment Center, Delhi. Now you have filed the information, the allocation will now possibly happen.
So, excuse me, sir. You mentioned about limited scrutiny. Certain notices have been received like limited scrutiny, and some notices have come just as scrutiny. What is the difference, sir?
No, so the way I understand is, or the notices which I have seen is, there are still notices which are issued by jurisdictional assessing officer also. So are both these notices issued by the National E-Assessment Center?
National E-Assessment.
And in case of scrutiny, where they just say scrutiny, have they listed down the issues?
Issues have been listed.
So then it has to be confined to those issues only.
Oh, thank you.
The assessment unit will not have power to go beyond those issues.
Thank you.
And there are specific issues mentioned in the notice. So what sort of response has to be given? Let's say business expenses. So are we going to give along with the proofs or just the basic note that has to be submitted?
Now, to answer this question, we'll have to go back to 143.2. 143.2 provides that assessing officer will issue a notice, which is happening in this e-assessment center cases also, and he will call either the assessee to appear in person or file the documents. So the last limb of 143.2 says the assessee shall furnish evidence on which he wants to rely in support of his return. So 143.2 is something which is discretion of the assessee in terms of what the assessee wants to rely. Okay, it is not what the assessing officer asks. The assessing officer asks only under 142.1.1. There he has a power to ask, okay, give me in this format, give me this information. But when 143.2 is issued, the power, it is up to the assessee that what is the evidence that assessee wants to give and what he wants to give in support of his return. Now it is up to the assessee what information has to be given. Now for example, if he is asking information on business expenditure, currently it is very difficult to visualize what is the action that assessing officer is going to take. If it is a specific issue like fixed assets, then it is still easy. If it is a specific issue that intangible assets, it's very easy that okay, for this issue I can give a note and give sample documents. Okay. Now in cases of where there are very wide, as I have seen some notices, the general statement is import-export of goods. Now I have 10,000 crores of import-export of goods. What do you expect me to give? So there is a specific note, and maybe in note at the end of that particular submission can be given that any additional information required, we will give us time to furnish or give us a notice, we will give that information. So you can give a description of information. If cases where it is possible to give sample documents supporting evidences, give that information, and we will have to see what action or the subsequent notice under 142.1 when they give, that becomes more specific because 142.1 is the power of the assessing officer to ask us the information. 143.2 is not the power of the assessing officer, it is only his power to pick up the case for scrutiny, and it is the responsibility of the assessee to furnish evidence in support of the return which the assessee wants, not what the assessing officer wants.
So one more question. So it says 15 days from the date of receipt of notice. So the notice may have one date, whereas the assessee would have received the email on a later date.
15 days from the date of receipt of notice.
So the date of receipt of
Yeah, the scheme itself is very clear, 15 days from the date of receipt of notice. In fact, this issue has been discussed informally at various levels with the officers, and that this 15 days should be extended and time for adjournment and all should be given. I think they will work on this, and maybe informally they will try, internally they are trying to extend this.
But even in the notice they will specifically write that within so and so day you have to respond back. So how will that have an impact?
So most of the cases, the notices I have seen, they are given 15 days itself. They are not given less than 15 days.
They also mentioned the
notice.
No, they mention the date, but if you see the dates, date of issue and date of information given is 15 days itself.
No, but the receipt of notice will be on a later date. Notice will
So
be.
that cannot happen because it is through email. In most of the cases, it won't happen that you receive the notice later because it is all electronically served. So in very rare cases, I would feel that it could come on the subsequent day. But even if that is the case, the time should be counted from the date of receipt of notice.
Can we take that the date of receipt of notice is the day when I received the email or?
Email. Receive the email because virtue of section 13 of Information Technology Act.
Last question. So if the 15th day falls on a public holiday, so do we take the exception?
By applying General Clauses Act, yes. But how good is General Clauses Act in these days of information technology is something which will remain open.
CPC, filing software, TDS, all they have not taken into consideration section 10 of General Clauses Act.
They are not taken. They are not taken. They are just calculated.
In graded disregard.
31st and 1 becomes 2 months for them.
So you mentioned that at any point of time, National E-Assessment Center doesn't have a right to convert the limited scrutiny into complete scrutiny.
The scheme does not visualize it.
Correct. Suppose if it is being, if the case demands so and it is being transferred to the jurisdiction assessing officer, will that case still be faceless assessment or will it be a faceless assessment?
No. Once it is transferred to the jurisdictional assessing officer, the scheme visualizes that it will no more remain in faceless assessment. It will go to your jurisdictional assessing officer. Jurisdictional assessing officer, by following the existing circulars, where you can take approval from CIT, convert a limited scrutiny into the complete scrutiny, that procedure you will have to follow. And after that, it will not be a faceless assessment, it will be face-to-face assessment.
when the assessee furnishes response in 15 days, in case he is not able to furnish elaborate or complete response, can he give an interim response and
I think within the taxpayer's right, I don't think anything stops you from giving interim response. Plus a note that give me time to collect the information.
Just a small question here. Under the National E-Assessment Center, while transferring the case to jurisdictional assessing officer, should they be fulfilling all the once the assessment should have been completed, review unit should do their duty. So only after doing that, if they fail to do the assessment completely, then only they should transfer the case to jurisdictional.
No, that part would really be not know. The scheme does not visualize that. The scheme visualizes that any point of time during the assessment proceeding, they can transfer the case to the jurisdictional assessing officer, and they have to accompany that with a transfer order under section 127. It doesn't say at what stage. At any point or any time during the proceedings, they can transfer it.
one more? Why this National E-Assessment Center assigns the job to specific assessment? So,
because of faceless. Because they want to maintain that wall, Chinese wall, or the German wall, whatever it was, between the regional E-Assessment Center or the assessment unit and the assessee, so that both don't talk to each other.
no, the National E-Assessment Center itself can have direct connection.
No, they have visualized that the assessee should not know which regional unit at what place the assessment unit is sitting. Now, if the National E-Assessment Center issues a notice, it will actually be from Delhi, and which I will know that my case is being scrutinized at Delhi. So there is a possibility that someone would approach someone in that particular assessment unit and try to get favor or whatever. So they want to create a wall between the assessee and the assessment unit, and in that assessment unit they have created further separate boxes or baskets, so that there is further split of jobs between different people. Naturally, now the current assessing officer has entire power with respect to a particular assessment. That would no longer remain. So if he has to do a favor also, he has to be sure that the review unit will not catch it, and he does not know which is the review unit which is going to review this order. So that is the kind of split they want to create between various units to ensure that not one single person is doing the assessment. It is a team-based assessment, and possibly try to bring in transparency and reduce the corruption. Whether it's successful or not is a different issue, because we will try and bring in ingenious methods to find out who is the assessment, which assessment unit is doing it. People will still do it maybe.
So you said the review units will review the draft articles of the assessment. So will the draft articles be issued to the assessee?
Yeah, I am coming to that. There is a procedure prescribed, I will come to that. So now first step is over. Now the assessment unit, after seeing the documents which are furnished by the assessee, it can ask further information, documents, evidences from the assessee or any other person, as it may specify. So this is now the role of assessment unit. What the assessment unit will do? It will ask additional information from the assessee, conduct certain inquiry or verification by verification unit. Now see what are the powers. A, it can ask information from the assessee. Second, it wants that certain inquiry is to be conducted. Say for example, someone has claimed 54F, I built a bungalow. So it may want to go and see the site whether the bungalow is there or something else is there. Right? So I want to do a verification. So the verification unit. So it can ask to conduct an inquiry by the verification unit. Seek technical assistance from the technical unit. Now these are the three things which the assessment unit can do. Ask information from the assessee, ask verification unit to do verification, and ask the technical unit to give some assistance and advice in terms of particular issue. So these are the three things it will do. These three things it will not do directly. It will go back to National E-Assessment Center that look, I require this information, or I want to do this verification, or I want this in technical input. So the National E-Assessment Center, based on the request of the assessment unit, go and tell the verification unit, you do this verification. Or if the information is asked from the assessee, it will go and it will issue a notice under 142.1, ask the assessee to furnish the information. So assessee now really don't know which assessment unit has sent me. Again he will file the information to the National E-Assessment Center only. If it requires some technical expertise, as I said, on various issues, then the National E-Assessment Center will send that request to the technical unit that this is the technical advice required, kindly give your inputs on this particular issue. Whatever information the assessee gives, or whatever inputs the verification unit gives, or whatever the inputs the technical unit gives, all inputs will first come to National E-Assessment Center, and National E-Assessment Center will send back to the same assessment unit which was assigned the assessment of that particular case. So everything will be routed through National E-Assessment Center. The scheme further provides that every movement from whether it is between the assessment units, between the assessment units and National E-Assessment Center, or between the National E-Assessment Center and assessee, all will be only through electronic mode, and there is no provision for manual interference or physical interference at any point of time. Everything will be through electronic mode, even between the assessment unit and say verification unit, assessment unit and National E-Assessment Center. So completely the everything will be through electronic mode and nothing will be through the physical mechanism. After getting these inputs from the assessee or from the verification unit or from the technical unit, the assessing officer will first make a draft assessment order. He will not pass a final assessment order. He will first make a draft assessment order, and that draft assessment order along with the what penalty should be initiated will be sent back to National E-Assessment Center. Now the draft order comes to National E-Assessment Center. That is the next step. What will National E-Assessment Center do with the draft order? It has again three options. What it wants to do with the draft order, it has three options. I think again here they have missed it, but possibly we'll have to do a harmonized rating of clause B and clause A here. We'll just go through what clause A and clause C provides. Clause A says, finalize the assessment as per the draft assessment order and serve a copy of such order or notice for initiating penalty proceedings, if any, to the assessee along with demand notice specifying the sum payable or refund due, whatever it is. Clause B, which is I think very important, provide an opportunity to the assessee in case of modification is proposed. Provide an opportunity to the assessee in case of modification of proposed by serving a notice calling him to show cause why assessment should not be completed as per the draft assessment order. The clauses A, B, C are separated by or. So it appears that the National E-Assessment Center can do any of these actions. But if you read clause B closely, it very clearly says in case of a modification, he should send the draft assessment order to the assessee or whatever email ID has been given, send a draft assessment order to that. To me, in every case where a modification has been done, National E-Assessment Center will say this is a draft assessment order, this is a show cause notice, kindly get back to us in terms of whether we should complete the assessment in accordance with the draft assessment order or you want to do any additional submissions on this. In the clause A should be applicable where it wants to finalize, suppose there is no addition to be made and it wants to issue a final order without any addition. Clause A can be directly used only in those cases, otherwise clause B should be used by National E-Assessment Center. Hopefully they clarify this further and say that in every case where a modification is proposed, a draft assessment order will be given to the assessee, because or being used in these three clauses it becomes an apprehension whether the opportunity will be given or not given. I hope in every cases where modifications are done, opportunity will be given. Look at the third. Assign the draft assessment order to review unit in one of regional E-Assessment Center through automated allocation system for conducting review of such order. So this is alternative again, that it looks at the draft assessment order given by the assessment unit. National E-Assessment Center is not happy with the draft assessment order and it wants to send it for review. At the stage when the draft assessment order comes to the National E-Assessment Center, there is one more provision. The National E-Assessment Center will examine the draft order received in accordance with the risk management strategy, including by way of automated examination tool. Automated examination tool as defined in the scheme to mean combination of AI, machine learning and data analytics to see that the order are standardized and there is without any discretions and orders are passed in a standardized manner. So when it comes to National E-Assessment Center, applying the automated examination tool, it will see whether the draft assessment order is in accordance with the quality parameters which the system, it has been fed into the system. If it is not so, possibly it will send that order to the review unit and ask the review unit, please look into this order. And then the role of review unit starts. So there are different roles. Assessment unit we saw, verification unit we saw technical unit. Now the review unit comes into picture, which will see whether the order is in accordance with the parameters which they want or not. Now the review unit will review the draft order and it may decide to concur with the draft order. It will say yes, the draft order is fine, no further changes are required in this, or suggest such modifications as it may deem fit to the draft assessment order and send suggestions to National E-Assessment Center. So now review unit will see the assessment order. Based on the review of the assessment order, draft assessment order, it will come up with its suggestions. Either it accepts it or it suggests modification. If it suggests modifications, the list of modification will go back to the National E-Assessment Center. So now here review unit also doesn't know who is the assessment unit doing this assessment. So they are trying to maintain wall between different units also. So it comes back to National E-Assessment Center. National Assessment Center will naturally forward it to the assessment unit. So if the review unit concurs, it says that the draft order is fine, then no further action is required. National unit will straight away pass the final assessment order. There is no further action required. But if the review unit suggests any modification, the same will be communicated to the assessment unit. So it will go back to the assessment unit that look, these are the changes which the review unit has prescribed. Kindly get back on these changes. The assessment unit will now again go through the modifications suggested by the review unit, and based on the suggestions of review unit, it will send the final draft assessment order to National E-Assessment Center. It is still in a draft mode only. Earlier was a draft order and now it is a final draft order, but it is not final order. That is still a step ahead. So draft order, final draft order. Now interesting issue would arise here is whether the recommendation of review unit, technical unit, verification unit are binding on assessment unit, or assessment unit still has a discretion to take action whatever it likes. The way scheme is framed, it appears that the assessment unit still has a discretion. It can look into the suggestions made and then take the action based on the evidence available with it, and need not concur with what review unit has said or what technical unit has said or what verification unit has said. The directions or suggestions made by these are not binding on the assessment unit. The scheme does not visualize that kind of a situation. If you look at 92 CA, the AO refers the case to TPO, and TPO's order is binding on the AO. There is no such provision here. There is no such provision here. But it comes back now to the assessment unit. Assessment unit looks into the modification and then passes the final draft assessment order. It comes back to National E-Assessment Center. National E-Assessment Center will again follow the same steps, ABC. If it thinks that draft assessment order is fine, it will pass a final assessment order. If it feels that again an opportunity should be provided to the assessee, it will provide an opportunity to the assessee, or it may follow the steps A or B, not C, because it's already gone to review unit. So it will go to review unit only once. So either clause A or clause B it will follow, and then it will ask for, and if a modification is there which is prejudicial to the interest of the assessee, one more opportunity to the assessee will be given at this stage. So it will send the final draft order to the assessee again and ask for the assessee's comment. Now if assessee does not respond to that final draft order, then that final draft order will become final order if assessee does not respond. So if the assessee responds, then what happens? It comes to the National E-Assessment Center and goes back to the assessment unit, and from assessment unit it comes back to the National E-Assessment Center for further action. So this football from this goal post to that goal post will keep on happening for some amount of time till the time limit is near. When the time limit is near, they have to anyway pass the order, so it will get done. But till that point, possibly there is going to be some to and fro between various units, and it will come back to the National E-Assessment Center, who will then pass the final order, final assessment order. Now, what happens after passing the final assessment order? The National E-Assessment Center passes the order, serves it on the assessee. Assessee through its email notification, mobile app, everything, gets the care. Now the scheme provides that after the assessment is made by National E-Assessment Center, on completion of assessment shall transfer all record to the jurisdictional assessing officer. Now here the role of jurisdictional assessing officer, new player, comes into picture. That for what is his role now? For imposition of penalty, collection and recovery of demand, which is the most important thing, rectification of mistake. Someone else has done the mistake, he will rectify it, giving effect to appellate orders, submission of remand report, etc., representation before tribunal, and proposal to seek sanction for launch of prosecution and filing of complaint before the court. Now these are 6 items which have been visualized for the jurisdictional assessing officer. So once the assessment order has been passed, the assessment order is very interesting. The assessment order has been passed, the position has been taken, decision has been taken. What penalty to levy or what penalty initiate, rather not levy, has also been decided by National E-Assessment Center. And then it comes to the jurisdictional assessing officer for imposition of penalty. That itself will be a challenge because satisfaction is of someone else, penalty is levied by someone else. So whether it is legally valid, you are open to challenge. That the jurisdictional assessing officer never recorded a satisfaction. The satisfaction was recorded by National E-Assessment Center, not by the jurisdictional assessing officer. But anyway, those are issues which will come up as we go further. But the role of jurisdictional assessing officer still remains. As someone asked in the beginning, what happens to the jurisdictional assessing officer? This is the role of jurisdictional assessing officer, and it still remains in the game for imposition of penalty, collection and recovery of demand. Naturally, National E-Assessment Center sitting there, computer cannot do the collection because it requires some amount of guts to collect the taxes, as we have seen in February and Marches, which will be done by the existing assessing officer and the jurisdictional assessing officer, rectification of mistake and other things. Rectification of mistakes may still happen after assessment unit, technical unit, verification unit, review unit, everyone seeing, still they visualize that rectification of mistake may still happen. But anyway, that is there. So that provision will remain. So these are the 6 things which the jurisdictional assessing officer will do. Yes, sir.
That should have been addressed. That is mistakes. There is zero mistake situation should have arrived. By the time the final draft of order is finalized.
See, if you look at one of the role of review unit, or one of the function of review unit to check arithmetical accuracy. But still there is a possibility that even after checking that there is a mistake apparent from record which requires rectification, which the jurisdictional assessing officer will do. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir. After doing all these reviews at, as you said, like a football, the information which has been collected by these e-assessment authorities, does the SSE have a right to review those facts which are available on record, or he is kept away from that?
Has it works currently? Okay. Now there are 2 things. One which I have submitted. Second, which what to and fro has happened between different officers or different units, from assessment to review to technical. Which unit has said what?
Yes.
Okay.
Those facts.
Currently, if you look at the current provisions, if there is a file noting, I have a right to take a copy of file noting. I have a right to take the copy of the documents which I have submitted by paying whatever the charges are applicable to this. So if I want to take a file noting, I can take it. Now, in the new electronic record system, how this will be? Whether the taxpayer's rights will be taken away. Now, can I file an RTI and ask this information? That what transactions has happened, what movement has happened, whether they will give us. Even if you look at current law under the RTA, this information can be asked. So when, for example, when the notice was passed, when it was posted, or what was my file noting, or different information, I can file an RTA if it is my own case. I cannot ask for someone else's case. But to the extent it is my case, I can ask this information. Now the question is, to whom will you file this RTA? Should I file this RTA to the jurisdictional assessing officer, or to the National E-Assessment Center, or PIO, Public Information Officer of the Income Tax Department? Possibly we'll have to file it at the National E-Assessment Center or PIO prescribed there and get this information. But asking this information to the jurisdictional assessing officer is of no use, because he says, I don't have any records. Or when the records are transferred, he should be able to give me the copy. But in terms of taxpayers' right to this information, the scheme cannot take away that right. That right remains intact, which was there under the old law, should remain under the new law also.
It have to be tested out.
It had to be tested out, but I should get it. The scheme cannot take away taxpayers' right.
Sir, there is no time limit within which SSA need to respond to the draft assessment or telling which it will be.
The notice will prescribe the time limit. Notice will prescribe the time limit. The notice which you get along with the draft order, the show cause notice, that naturally will prescribe the time limit.
Reasonable time limit.
Reasonable time limit. That is one issue which I raised, that if it gives me 10 days and I require additional time, how will I seek an adjournment? In an electronic form, how will I seek an adjournment? That is something which is a difficulty, but it will be there.
So how do you think it has an? How do you think all this entire scheme of e-assessment, conducted by various private assessments in regional centers, will have an impact on invocation of power by the commissioner under 263?
I will come to that. That separately I will deal with 263, 142, 144C.
Because like, how can the given conditions?
Lot of issues are there. We'll deal with it. Just let me complete the scheme part of it. So as I said, there is one provision that notwithstanding anything contained in any paragraph 18 of the scheme, the National E-Assessment Center at any stage of the assessment, if considered necessary, transfer the case to the jurisdictional assessing officer. Naturally, they will have to pass an order under 127 and transfer the case to the jurisdictional assessing officer. Now, certain more provisions, then we will go to the issues. How will penalty proceedings for non-compliance? Now, there are two different aspects: penalty proceedings during the course of assessment for non-compliances of notice, and penalty proceedings post the assessment, like concealment penalty under old 271(1)(c) or 270 capital A for under-reporting income. So, those cases, if you see that, those will be done by the jurisdictional assessing officer. Imposition of penalty, first point here. So, the National E-Assessment Center is going to say, okay, initiate penalty under 270 capital A for under-reporting of so and so. Then the AO will take over from there and levy the penalty. But during the course of assessment proceedings, the 142(1) notice has been issued and assessee does not respond to that, or similar aspects which are applicable during the course of assessment proceedings, like 193(6) being issued and information has not been given. The penalty for those cases, the power for levy of penalty for those cases has been modified. Chapter 21 has been modified by notification 62, and that power has been given to the National E-Assessment Center. The National E-Assessment Center will follow this procedure. In case of a non-compliance, direction order issued by the assessee, any unit. So assessment unit may say that assessee is not complying with it, and it may make a recommendation to the National E-Assessment Center to initiate the penalty proceedings. The National E-Assessment Center, on receiving the recommendation from the assessment unit or different unit, whatever it may be, it will send a show cause notice to the assessee saying that we propose to levy this penalty. The assessee will naturally respond to this, and based on the response of the assessee, National E-Assessment Center will levy the penalty. So any penalty during the course of assessment proceedings will be levied by the National E-Assessment Center. Penalty post the assessment listing will be levied by the jurisdictional assessing officer.
Assessee will come to know, isn't it, that the matter has been referred to or transferred to the jurisdictional.
Yes, 127 order will have to be served on the assessee.
Assessee also will.
Yes. The appeal against the assessment order will remain with the existing CIT appeals jurisdiction. The scheme very clearly provides that the existing CIT appeals will have the jurisdiction for the appeal matters. For the authentication of electronic record,
Just on this appeal aspect, so like in case after once the draft assessment order is shared with the assessee and the assessee does not offer any comment or does not respond to the draft assessment order, can the department take a stand that the assessee has conceded to the addition and therefore the addition can be sustained?
no, I don't think that would happen, because that can happen in the current situation also. The notice has been served, I could not furnish the information for execution.
So once the draft assessment order is
In either case, even if you see today also, show cause notices are issued that this is the proposal and these are the additions I am proposing. So if I am not able to furnish certain information and then I file an appeal, there I will have to demonstrate that what is the reasonable cause for not being able to furnish this information. If I am doing that,
the 246A at all.
246A will come into picture. Authentication of records through digital signature or other mechanism which are prescribed, we'll have to wait for other methods what will be prescribed, otherwise the DAC is anyway there. Exchange of information communication exclusive to electronic mode. Now, power to specify. Now the personal hearing. During the course of assessment proceedings, if the assessee wants a personal hearing, how will that happen? So the scheme makes a provision for that, that assessee shall not appear before any assessment unit either through personally or assessment or authorized representative in any proceedings before the income tax authority. But if there is a modification proposed to the returned income, if there is an addition or disallowance proposed, and assessee feels that he is entitled, the assessee is entitled to seek personal hearing, so as to make an oral submission and present his case before the income tax authority in any unit of this scheme. Now, how this will be done is, while doing this hearing, the board will, this hearing will be done exclusive through video conferencing. It will not be done in a physical manner. So, the hearing will be notified to the verification unit that this assessee wants a personal hearing on so and so matter, and some time, how the timing will be fixed, all that we will have to wait for the procedures and formats for that. Possibly a time will be fixed. In that particular time, the video conferencing will happen. Video conferencing can happen through own computer resource mobile app. They are also saying that we will bring in video conferencing facilities at different locations, so that the video conferencing, the assessee should not be prejudiced because there is no video conferencing facility available with the assessee. So possibly they will set up these facilities at different assessing departments what we have today. For example, Coromandel, they may set up an video conferencing facility there, and assessee may go there and do it. The challenge here will be two things. That one is that many times we have to refer to documents during the hearings. So we tell him that refer page 4, page 5 of this. Now in a video conferencing, this has to be carefully done. So you'll have to ensure that what documents are being filed, either there is proper annexation numbering or sequencing of the pagination of the documents, so that when you are doing a video conferencing, you can go back and refer, look at annexure A or annexure C or annexure Z or page number so and so. If that is not done, the video conferencing will be very difficult. Even currently when we appear before tribunal, this becomes very important, because how you present the case becomes very important. In a physical case, you can always sit with the assessing officer and take him through, but that will be more difficult when a video conferencing is there. One. Second, the information is now, the verification unit is doing this hearing, and the order is passed by the assessment unit. Now what about what he communicates from the verification unit to the National E-Assessment Center and National E-Assessment Center to the assessment unit is something which they will have to lay down clear guidelines. And how this will be documented, whether there will be a video recording of this which will be available with the assessment unit, or there is some mechanism or file mounting or documenting the information given by the assessee, how this has been done. It has to be, they have to prescribe proper procedure and format for this. Otherwise, what assessee has stated to verification unit and what verification unit states back to the assessment unit, no one knows how much of communication gap as well as understanding gap is there. We face that difficulty in face-to-face assessment itself, because what we are explaining is not necessarily that it is conveyed to the assessing officer. That becomes further challenging in the e-assessment. Can the assessee say, challenge this scheme that this video conferencing I don't want, I want a physical appearance? Possibly we'll have to test it out at the court, because that's a taxpayer right to give a sufficient opportunity to explain the case. But as I said, they amended 223C, the definition of hearing, and said that even hearing through electronic records is hearing. So these all will have to be seen in the future, but what they are visualizing is complete gap, there is no physical interaction, and everything is only an electronic interaction between the assessee and the assessment unit. Assessee and the assessment unit. So let us look at what issues would arise and what interaction it would have with the different provisions and how we would try and address this. How different units would get power, this aspect I discussed in the beginning, that each of the assessment units, regional review unit, technical unit, have been prescribed as the assessing officer by virtue of notification 72 and 77. So under those units, they will get the power. Only challenge I visualize here is that when the verification unit or review unit or technical unit comes into picture and does the assessment, or becomes part of the assessment. Though they have concurrent jurisdiction, but whether without 127 order between these units, whether they coming in doing the assessment, whether it will be valid. If we go by the existing jurisprudence, even if a case is transferred from ACIT, DCI to the additional commissioner, there has to be a valid transfer order between these. No doubt both of them have concurrent jurisdiction, but still without that, without a transfer order, they cannot get the power. Second, the existing monetary limits, like 30 lakhs between the ITU and ACDC, that appears to have not been considered in the scheme, and in all cases the assessment is, the notices have been issued by ACIT e-verification. So that also somewhere there needs to be factored in. Natural justice, as I said, various issues are there which I have brought in terms of hearing, personal hearing, hearing through video conferencing and those things. Adjournments I have just addressed. Now we come to 147. Whether 147 proceedings will be covered. The scheme 143.3a very clearly said this is only for the purpose of making an assessment under 143.3, computation of total income and loss under 143.3. So the assessments under 147 will not be covered by the e-assessment scheme. Someone could raise an argument that even an order under 147 is always passed 147 read with 143.3. Well, that would be covered under 143. But the way scheme has been visualized, it is very clear that 143.3, 147 is out of the e-assessment, and 147 in all cases will be done on manual basis. No doubt, the interpretation of terms under 147 would have implication. For example, where specific issues have been raised, on those issues whether reassessment can be done. That would be really challenging because now the notice itself says so and so issues, like a business expenditure or intangible assets. Now, when that issue has been specified in the 143.2 notice, and so many people have gone through that, the assessment unit, review unit, National E-Assessment Center, artificial intelligence, machine learning, after that doing a reopening on the same issue is going to be difficult, and change of opinion as set by the Supreme Court in Calvinator case will be applicable, and at least for the issues for which 147, for originally 143.2 was issued, those issues there is a now good amount of cases, that good amount of chance that we can say 147 will not be applicable. Currently what is happening is, if the issue is there and the assessing officer has not done the inquiry on that particular issue, then the reopening, the change of opinion part of 147 is not being applicable. And they say that if there is a material which is subsequently available with the assessing officer, the test of reason to believe under 147 is getting satisfied. But now under the new scheme, the reason to believe, at least on the issues which the 143.2 was specifically picked up, on those cases there is we could argue that there is no chance that 147 can be done. No doubt other issues which are there, those 147 can be done. 147 can be done. Second aspect is first proviso to 147. First proviso to 147 says that if 143.3 is already done and assessee has made true and full disclosure of all the material facts, then no reassessment can be done after 4 years from the end of the assessment year. Now here, currently when we are submitting information before the assessing officer, we would take a position that this information was given to the assessing officer. I have made the disclosure. If the assessing officer has not applied his mind on that information, you cannot blame me. You cannot say I have not given true and full disclosure. Okay. So to that extent, that test should still be applicable even in the new e-assessment scheme, especially on the issues which have been raised, and once the information has been given, it should, and if the assessee has given all the information related to that particular issue, in those cases the 147 should not happen. Next, what happens whether the search cases are covered? So again here, if you look at the originally, as I said, the scheme does not touch upon 132. No modification has been made to section 132. No modification has been made either to 153 capital A, capital B or capital C. Those issues are completely out of e-assessment. Those assessments in search cases will still be done by the mechanism of regular assessment by the jurisdictional assessing officer also, assessing officer only. Now, but in the context of 133 capital A, because there the assessment is not done under 153A, the assessment is being still done under 143.3 itself. 143.3 itself. So in the cases of survey And if you see notification 62, 133A is specifically mentioned in the list of sections which have been modified. So in cases of survey where the assessment is still being done under 143.3 itself, unless it results in 147 in certain cases, but otherwise if the assessment is still under 143.3 itself, in those cases the e-assessment scheme will be applicable. But in cases of search, the e-assessment scheme will not be applicable, and those cases will be dealt by the jurisdictional assessing officer or the central wing as it has been happening.
Sir, one more thing. In case, in the meantime, settlement commission also takes over that case.
Now, if it is a search case and you have made an application for settlement commission, search cases are anyway not under National E-Assessment Center. They are still under your regular jurisdictional assessing officer. So during the course of assessment under 153 capital A, if you make an application to National E-Assessment Center, those cases it should be applicable. Now, if it is a case of 143.3, because in the last year of a search, the year of a search, still the assessment is done under 143.3 only. There, I believe the way they are going to do is they are going to issue notice under 143.2 by National E-Assessment Center, but transfer the case by virtue of 127 to the jurisdictional assessing officer. That is how it should be done. Otherwise, if it is not done in that way, then there is going to be problem. And if I make an application to settlement commission, those provisions will naturally override the scheme. The scheme does not modify or touch upon any provisions of settlement scheme. So those provisions will have standalone existence and they will override the scheme to that extent. Override the scheme to that extent.
Excuse me, is best judgment assessment included in the scheme?
Best judgment assessment is already also passed under 143 itself, read with 144. So that also will be done under the scheme also. So even for doing best judgment assessment, you will have to issue notice. Then the issue comes is how the reference to TPO will be done in the new setup. Now, if you see 92CA, the jurisdictional assessing officer, if he feels that it is necessary and expedient to do so, he will refer the case to the transfer pricing officer for doing the assessment in transfer pricing matters. Whether the existing provisions will continue or some change needs to be done for that. If you look at the technical unit, the role of technical unit, one of the roles of technical unit is transfer pricing. So they have highlighted various aspects, legal, accounting, forensic, data analytics, and one of the items is transfer pricing. So it is not clear whether now the TPO will become part of technical unit or the existing TPO will remain as it is. Now if the existing TPO remains as it is, can the National E-Assessment Center make a reference to TPO directly? And if he makes a reference to the TPO directly, to which TPO he will do? So now there are two situations that are possible. National E-Assessment Center transfers the case to the jurisdictional assessing officer and jurisdictional assessing officer refers to the TPO. If that is the case, there is no problem. If this procedure is followed, there is no problem. Now, if the National E-Assessment Center transfers the case directly to the TPO, to which TPO he will transfer, one issue arises. Second, every reference to TPO should be accompanied by an approval which is given by CIT or PCIT. Now, who will give that approval? The PCIT or CIT sitting in National E-Assessment Center or CIT who is sitting in the jurisdictional assessing officer's jurisdiction. Again, that aspect is not clear. In fact, scheme does not visualize reference to TPO at all. It does not say that we will make a reference to TPO. It only says that as a part of technical unit, there will be a transfer pricing also. So either the existing cadre of TPO is submerged into the technical unit and the assessment is done as a part of technical unit itself. And if that is the case, then the 92CA will effectively become redundant and it will get merged into the existing provision of 143.3 also. This would have very interesting implications. If the transfer pricing reference is done in the technical unit itself, and technical unit itself computes the arm's length price and gives it to the assessment unit, in that case 92CA will not be applicable. If 92CA is not applicable, it will have implications. For example, 153 provides that if reference is made to TPO, the extended time limit of 1 year will be applicable. Now there is no reference to TPO, so extended time limit of 1 year cannot be applied. Second, 144C, draft assessment order. To become an eligible assessee, the addition should be made, the variation should be made by an TPO when he is passing an order under 92CA5. If he does not pass an order under 92CA5, 144C has no role to play. Now, if the TPO is part of technical unit and the transfer pricing assessment also is done by the technical unit itself, then 144C will have no role to play. It will have no role to play. To that extent, whether it becomes redundant is an issue. Can a notification make a section redundant? Again, will be an issue that needs to be addressed. But the scheme per se does not visualize reference to TPO, or in all probability, the best course of action in my view would be they transfer such cases to the jurisdictional assessing officer, and jurisdictional assessing officer makes a reference to the TPO and he takes it over from there. But if they are doing direct transfer, it will lead to a good amount of legal challenges. It will lead to good amount of legal challenges. Another interesting issue arises is under 92 CA, a transfer pricing orders, the TPO's order is binding on the EO. And the EO has to give effect to the TPO's finding and compute the arm's length price, accordingly compute the total income. The technical unit's findings are not binding on the EO, on the assessment unit. So how will that interplay work? And what are the technical unit's input, and whether the EO follows it or does not follows it? The scheme does not say that those inputs are binding on the assessment unit. So assessment unit can still take its own way and can still do whatever it wants to do, despite there being an input from the technical unit. So that interplay also will have to be kept in mind as the case goes forward. Same issues may arise where a reference is made to valuation officer. He is now outside the department also. He must be he is a third person. Now, how that reference will be made? Can National E-Assessment Center directly make a reference to the valuation officer, or they will transfer the case to the jurisdictional assessing officer who will take it over from there? So if they directly make, then the legal challenges will arise, whether they have a power to do it, because the scheme does not visualize reference to valuation under 142 capital A. The scheme does not make any provision for that sort. It does not capture or does not provide any mechanism for that. So that power still remains with the jurisdictional assessing officer. In all probability, they will transfer such kind of cases to the jurisdictional assessing officer. If they do not transfer, such assessments would be open to challenge. Next is 144C. As we discussed, the assessment unit will pass a draft assessment order. 144C already has a provision to pass a draft assessment order. If you are an eligible assessee under 144C, which is a foreign company, or an assessee in whose case variation has been made under 92 CA, in those cases, if an addition to income is proposed, if a variation to the return income is proposed, a draft order has to be passed. Now, how will that be factored in the e-assessment scheme is again not clear. There is no role visualized for DRP in the scheme. There is no role visualized for the DRP in the scheme. Again, it goes back to the same thing, whether they will transfer such cases to the jurisdictional assessing officer and take it forward from there. But if they are not passing, the interplay between the scheme and 144C will be interesting. For example, if there is a foreign company which is an eligible assessee under 144C, the assessment unit gives a draft order, review unit gives certain gives a certain inputs, then the assessment unit pass the final draft order. Now, because it is a foreign company, 144C is applicable. So then again he has to pass a draft order and then forward it to the assessee. Now, how will they do this? It has not been provided in the scheme. So these are issues which the scheme does not even visualize. The scheme does not, as I said in the beginning, interaction with other sections, the gelling with other section, the scheme does not take care. It only takes care of 142 and 143 in the surrounding sections or connected sections. It does not take care of different sections at different places which may require some changes either in the scheme or those respective sections to make the scheme workable. Otherwise, in all these kind of cases, there will be a problem. For example, how will 142 2A work? Special audit. Who will refer? National E-Assessment Center will refer. Jurisdictional Assessing Officer will refer. Now, the scheme does not give power to refer it to an outside. It can refer within only. Either assessment unit, review unit, assign the cases there only. It does not visualize the situation to refer to a special audit to an auditor. It does not provide for any mechanism for that. Now, whether National E-Assessment Center can directly refer to a special audit, I don't think so. The scheme does not provide, so there cannot be any reference by National Assessment Center directly for the special audit. So those sections will have no role to play in the new scheme, and that is where the scheme will be open to challenge, that is make those sections OTS, and the scheme requires modification. Special audit again, because it is done by third party, and if the reference is not there in the scheme, how will the reference be made? 263, 264. These are again an interesting ramification. What is the scope of 263? First, which CIT can do 263? CIT sitting in National E-Assessment Center can do 263, or CIT of the jurisdictional AO can do 263. Which CIT will do 263? After the assessment order is passed, the files are transferred to the jurisdictional AO. The assessment order is passed by the National E-Assessment Center. There is a difference in language in 263 and 264. 263 is where the CIT feels that the order passed by the AO is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue. He can revise that order. 264 is other than 263. So if he wants to give a relief to the assessee can make an application to the CIT that kindly give me these reliefs or these benefits. 264 very specifically uses the word that order should be passed by officers subordinate to CIT. The orders 264 very specifically uses the word that under 264, if you want to make a revision, the order should be passed by subordinate of the CIT. Now, the order is passed by ACIT E-Verification in National E-Assessment Center. The jurisdictional assessing officer CIT is sitting in, AO and CIT is sitting in, say in Bangalore. So, whom should an assessee make an application? Can I make an application to the jurisdictional CIT, or should I make an assessment to the National E-Assessment Center? And if I make an application to National E-Assessment Center, the papers are already transferred to jurisdictional E-Assessment Center. So this problem again has not been factored in the scheme. If I make an application to the CIT of the jurisdictional assessing officer, he is going to say the order is passed by National E-Assessment Center and that officer is not subordinate to me, I do not have jurisdiction. If I make an application to National E-Assessment Center, he will say, I have already transferred the case to the jurisdictional assessing officer, I do not have any records. So, can a scheme make 264 unworkable? To that extent, the scheme again will be open to challenge. There is a problem which has not been taken care in this thing. Coming to 263. 263 does not use a word subordinate to the CIT. But in a practical situation, all of us have seen that the jurisdictional CIT only does the 263. So if there is an assessing officer, the range CIT will do that 263, revision will be done by 263. In fact, there are cases where if the TPO there was a mistake in TPO's order and the revision order was passed by the CIT of the TPO, that was held invalid because he could not have jurisdiction under 263. So ideally, the revision under 263 should be done by the officer who is having control over the person who has passed the order. That would have been the most ideal situation. But given that the records are being transferred to the jurisdictional assessing officer, the way the revenue visualizes it or the department visualizes is that the existing CIT, jurisdiction of the CIT will do the 263. To me, that would be incorrect. And there is a lacuna in the scheme which will have to be challenged in every 263 cases. Second part, if the AO himself has picked up the matter on two issues, can now the CIT either sitting in the jurisdictional AO or sitting in National E-Assessment Center can do a revision for third or fourth or fifth issue? What AO could have done is only two issues. It's a limited scrutiny or it is specific scrutiny for those two or three issues. The 263 will have to be restricted to those two or three issues only. Now, if you start, you cannot go beyond that. You can refer various decisions. There is Bombay Tribunal decision, Chennai Tribunal decisions, which have said that if the case is picked up for limited scrutiny, the scope of 263 also will be restricted to those limited scrutiny issues only. You cannot go beyond that. That raises a very interesting issues. For the specific issues, assessment unit has looked into, review unit has looked into, automated examination tool of National E-Assessment Center has looked into. After so many people looking into, can it be an erroneous order? Can you say AO has not applied his mind or the machine has not applied its mind? That is going to be difficult. To that extent, every order passed by e-assessment center, National e-assessment center. In those cases, making 263 is going to be greatly difficult for the department, and we will be able to demonstrate that the orders are not erroneous because there are so many people. There's an entire team sitting which is applying its mind to those issues, and how can you say that then assessment order is erroneous? That would not happen. And the second problem, which CIT should do 263. If National e-assessment CIT does 263, say that he has no jurisdiction, reason jurisdiction AO has. If he does, say that he has jurisdiction. In either case, we will have to challenge it.
Just on this transfer of the records, considering all the records are maintained in electronic form, how can the transfer of the records happen like with the National e-assessment center not having the records at all?
No, they will have a backup record.
Right.
The purpose of transfer of record is to say that now onwards this case will be dealt by the jurisdictional assessing officer. The role of National e-assessment center ends with making the assessment order. Post that, it becomes functus officio. It has no further role to play. That is the purpose of to say that I am transferring the record to the jurisdictional assessing officer. What would be the scope of concurrent jurisdiction? This we discussed in the beginning. That can so many officers get concurrent jurisdiction? Can different officers at the same time do the assessment together? The current judicial precedents that we have in the context of 120 subsection 5 says that if a case is assigned to one officer, that officer should start and end the case unless there is a transfer order when the case moves from one assessing officer to another assessing officer. Whether even if it is moving from ACIT to ITO or ITO to ACIT because of monetary limit of 30 lakhs or 40 lakhs, that also should be accompanied by the 127 order. If 127 order is not there, such transfer from an AO to another AO is not covered under 120 subsection 5. Concurrent jurisdiction provision will not be applicable. That would be the same challenge that would arise in case of e-assessment when they transfer the case to verification unit, or when they transfer the case to technical unit, when they transfer the case to the review unit. All these cases, how they are going to interpret provisions of 127 and read with section 120 subsection 5, we'll have to wait and see how the courts interpret it. If they have to have a transfer order in every case, it is going to be a good amount of administrative hassle for the department to implement it. Either they make some amendment in 120 subsection 5 or 127 to provide that this inter-se movement between one unit to other unit, the transfer order under 127 is not required. If they do not do that, if you apply the current existing judicial precedents, there is going to be some amount of difficulty.
But the scheme is so envisaged, there is no concurrent or simultaneous jurisdiction over an assessee. It will be first taken up at the National e-verification center. Once that process is complete, after the assessment is complete, e-assessment is complete, the records will be subsequently transferred to the regional assessment. The AO, the physical AO. There is no concurrent or simultaneous jurisdiction.
Now, if you look at notification 72 and 77, very clearly they have said that the officers, income tax authorities sitting in the National e-assessment center and regional e-assessment center would have concurrent jurisdiction on the existing.
For the limited purpose of serving the purpose of the scheme, but simultaneously they may not.
What would happen, sir, if there is no concurrent jurisdiction? If there is no concurrent jurisdiction, suppose they want to transfer a case from the regional e-assessment center, National e-assessment center to the jurisdictional AO. How will they transfer it? One. Second, under section 120 subsection 1, the power is assigned to AO. The AO gets the power only what is assigned to him. He does not have any power more than that. So if he is assigned a particular case, he has power to do an assessment to that. He can exercise all his powers and do function related to that particular case only. He cannot do anything beyond that. Now, if this concurrent jurisdiction is not accepted, if this concurrent jurisdiction is not there, then how will the existing jurisdictional assessing officer do a jurisdiction assessment for other years, which is still continuing?
It is in respect of the earlier years, not for the same year.
But the jurisdiction is not for 1 year. The jurisdiction is for all the years, and the PAN gets transferred.
Okay.
Right? So that is why the notification 72 and 77 very clearly says that the officers sitting in National E-Assessment Center and Regional E-Assessment Center would have a concurrent jurisdiction on the assessee. The word used is concurrent jurisdiction, which comes from 120 subsection 5.
Because that may be because of the scheme is so envisaged, as you told, it is a football match happening between the two.
That is why they have visualized a concurrent jurisdiction. There is a visual, because if they don't give concurrent jurisdiction,
once the order is concluded, thereafter the regional center only will have the power.
after that is fine. But till the order has been passed, there is a concurrent jurisdiction between the different officers.
That may be the reason, we have almost 42 officers notified in Bangalore, whereas at the national level we have only one officer notified so far.
No, that one officer is only for issuing notice.
Issuing the notice.
But there are 609 officers notified for under the regional E-Assessment.
Bangalore only we have more than 42 officers.
Yeah.
Sir, is there a criteria before the assessment order? Can it be transferred to jurisdictional officer? Is there a criteria?
That's a scheme visualizes. It doesn't give any criteria. It says that if the National E-Assessment Center, in its opinion, it is required, at any stage of the proceedings, it can be transferred. Now, why it forms so an opinion, that if one has to find out, we'll have to file an RTI and get the information. Last issue is 144 capital A. Again, the scheme does not visualize this. Currently, today, if there is a 144 capital A, if I want, I can approach the JCIT and ask the JCIT that you give the direction to the assessing officer with respect to so and so assessment during the course of the assessment. And those directions given by JCIT are binding on the assessing officer. Now, in the scheme, there is no such provision. Now, the assessment is being done by National E-Assessment Center. Which JCIT I should approach? The JCIT is sitting in National E-Assessment Center or my jurisdictional JCIT? My jurisdictional JCIT will not be able to give any directions because the assessment is happening at the National E-Assessment Center. And the scheme does not visualize making an application under 144 capital A to the JCIT sitting in National E-Assessment Center. To that extent, again, there is a gap between the scheme and the provision. It effectively makes 144 capital A redundant or OTS and have no application practically going forward. To that extent, scheme again requires reconsideration. Possible changes may have to be done. So these are some issues which I have visualized. Many more will arise as we go forward with the scheme. The scheme is with a good intent to bring transparency and accountability to some level and bring team-based assessment. Hopefully it is smoothly implemented and the assessees are given adequate facilities to file information for e-hearings and the smooth rollout is there. Otherwise it creates a lot of issues as happened in the initial years of e-filing or initial years of CPC where a lot of teething trouble was there. They have good enough time because the assessments for these which have been picked up now for them the due date is next September. So they can implement and bring clarity in a lot of issues and clarify the issues which will come up in the meantime, so that there is a smooth rollout of the scheme. The intent is good. Hopefully the implementation of the scheme is also proper and proper changes are made wherever it is required. If you have any questions, we can take or.
So will have same time limits of completion assessment?
We'll have same time. 153 time limits are not modified. Time limits remain same.
So the order notice. So
some notice has been given. Income from liquor business is the issue.
What is the issue?
what are the documents you have to apply for?
Out of syllabus. Possibly you'll have to justify it. I mean, if it's an audited case, then if you look at the issue here, again as Sir had rightly highlighted, so wide, income from business. Now how do I answer this? So I have to say that yes, this is income from business, I have offered under profits and gains of business or profession. These are my sample sale bills, and whatever I have done, there is no cash sales, everything has been offered. So otherwise, there is really nothing much you can do it. Possibly at a later stage, they may come up with some mismatch in some records in local VAT returns or things like that, which you will have get more info at 142.1 is being issued. At this stage, I think you can give the basic information, what it comprises of, what it is, the breakup of this. Yeah.
How will the power of attorney be submitted?
It will have to be possibly uploaded with the when the facility is provided, when you are making a request for video, e-hearing, that time power of attorney will have to be uploaded. So I think they because these procedural part, the power has been given to PCIT to prescribe these procedural part. So in that I think they will take care of that.
So let's say the 15 days is given for the video conferencing thing, I mean the time limit for giving the response. So will the assessing need to wait until the assessing unit says that okay you can, the authorized representative can present your case?
No, in all probability I think the way it will happen is they will give time slots. That this is the time slot within which if you have made a request, suppose you have made a request for e-hearing, e-personal hearing. So there will be some mechanism in the online portal that they will give a time slots, and you can select those time slots, and in those time slots the hearing can happen. We'll have to wait for procedures for that, but that is how it should happen. That these are the time slots, you select the time slots, and within this time slot the video conferencing will happen and the matter can be discussed.
Sir, is this scheme implemented first in India or is there any other?
There are other countries. No, there are other countries which are having these things. I mean, they are taken from certain cases. There are other countries. May not be exactly in this form in terms of breaking up into different units, but there are cases where this kind of assessments are happening.
So, excuse me, sir. Regarding representation of these e-assessments, will the SSC have to do the representation online, or can an auditor do it by filing a power of attorney?
Yes, it can happen.
Can be done.
Can be done. There is no change to the provision of 288 in terms of authorized representative.
Thank you.
Sir, in case of limited scrutiny, is it mandatory to get a 142.1 notice?
In every case, 142.1 will be issued.
In the first notice itself, there will be like TDS mismatch, tax audit report and disallowance under tax computation. I will clarify that 30% is disallowed in the tax computation. Can I quote the limited scrutiny notification wherein now they should not go beyond the questions? Can we submit in the first itself?
So you submit, see, as I clarified, 143.2, if you see 143.2, it's the power of the assessing, not power of the assessing officer. 143.2, last name of 143.2 says that the assessee can file any evidence in support of return. So it is up to you what you want to file in support of return. If the assessment unit is happy with your explanation and it does not want any further information, it will not issue 142.1. It will conclude the assessment, send the draft assessment order to the assessment, National E-Assessment Center. If it is not happy with your explanation, it will come up with 142, give me additional information.
Most of the time, if you go for a normal assessment, they will be asking to submit books of accounts. In this scenario,
that itself is an issue. If that itself is an issue, fine. But otherwise, that situation cannot happen that you submit entire books of accounts, because the scrutiny here is being picked up for specific issue. So to that extent, for that specific issue, what is the requirement only can be asked.
in this case, limited scrutiny they have mentioned and normal scrutiny also they mentioned.
They have mentioned this, but in all the notices, issue has been mentioned. So like example, this notice, income has been mentioned. Now you cannot start digging expense. You will have to restrict yourself to income. So in all the notices, whether it is mentioned as limited scrutiny, it is what I have seen, or computer aided scrutiny, selection of scrutiny, or whatever terminology has been used, but the issue has been mentioned. And the scheme very clearly visualized that when 143.2 is made, you will specify the issue. The notice issued without specifying the issue is invalid. Thank you one and all for patient hearing.
Friends, we had a detailed analysis of a new scheme of faceless assessment. As Speaker mentioned, the intention of the government is good, to bring in more transparency and reduce bribe or undue influence to get favorable order or bad order. So with that, Speaker spared his valuable time and precious knowledge shared with us. Please thank him with a good round of applause. As a token of appreciation and gratitude, let us present a gift voucher to Speaker. Friends, last but most important, for active participation, your eagerness to learn on the new topic made us to organize this program. Thank you very much. Please keep coming. Thank you.